As a part of this section, we'll go through certain steps that would help us install Salesforce CLI in our local, and we will also connect that with our VS Code, followed by how do I need to authorize the Salesforce org. We'll be going through the entire setup as a part of this video that helps us connect the VS Code with our Salesforce org. Now, without any delay, let's get started. The first step that we have is to install our VS Code. So what exactly is a VS Code? VS Code is nothing but an IDE. What is an IDE? IDE is nothing but integrated development environment that would help us ease the process of help us building an application. It is mostly used for our development needs. So what is an IDE? IDE is nothing but a software application that helps programmers develop the software code efficiently. Right? So it basically increases the productivity by having certain shortcuts plus also pre-built code that gets generated when we use certain commands. So we'll see how do we do that. For time being, what we'll do, we'll switch to our first step, which is nothing but installing our VS Code. For that, what I'll do, I'll go ahead and switch to my browser, where I'll be looking at an option to download the VS Code for us. VS Code is nothing but Visual Studio Code. You can download that from the internet just by searching VS Code download for Windows. In case if you are using Windows, in case if you are using Mac, feel free to go ahead and search for the same thing. Now I get the first link which says code.vscode.com. I'll open that link. And here are the options that are provided to us. In case if you are using Mac or Windows, you can basically land on this page and download the right VS Code depending on the operating system that you have. So I'll go ahead and do it for the Windows. I'm using Windows here. So I'll just go ahead and download it. So the VS Code has been downloaded in my system. What I'll do, I'll go ahead and open this file so that way we can execute it. This is the place where I've downloaded my VS Code. So I'll just click on this. It would give me an interface where I need to go ahead and click on next. This is the interface that you would see once you start clicking on it. So go through the license and agreement part. Once you have read it, click on I accept the agreement, then click on next. It would ask you for the path where you want to install this VS Code. I'll just leave it by default. So click on next. We do not have to do anything in case if you want to create a VS Code as a shortcut on the desktop. Feel free to check this checkbox. For me, I can access it from the start menu. So I'll keep it as it is. I'll not check this checkbox. Feel free to do it in case if you need it, and I'll click on install here. So it would initiate the process of installation. This is the first step in our setup where we have installed the VS Code. If you see here, our installation process is done. Upon clicking on finish, we should be done with the installation process and we should be seeing the VS Code that comes up. This is how the VS Code would look like once you have installed your Visual Studio Code in your system. Now, what are the next steps that we need to do? Let's go back to our PPT and see what is the step number 2. So step number 1, we have installed the VS Code in our system. So this step is completed. We can proceed on to the second one, which is nothing but installing the Salesforce CLI. So what is the CLI? CLI is nothing but the command line interface provided by Salesforce, which would help us with the certain commands that would help us the process of talking to Salesforce easier in terms of the commands that are available to us. Example of a command that comes up with the CLI is deploy the changes that I have in my local. So you can retrieve the changes, deploy the changes, run the test class, create an Apex class. All those commands are bundled together and they are provided in your CLI. So we'll just install this command line interface. For that, what I'll do, I'll go back to the browser and start searching for Salesforce CLI download. If you search for download CLI, Salesforce CLI, that is where you will be seeing this documentation. Since I'm on Windows, I'm just opening this documentation and click on this download button. And this is the link that opens up. I'll share this links in the description, so that way it would be easier for you to download them without having to going through the search process of it. Since I'm using Windows here, I'll go ahead and download this Windows for x64. In case if you are using x86, feel free to do that. So since I'm using a Windows 64, I'll just go ahead and download this Salesforce CLI. Again, it is asking me to the place where I wanted to install it. So I'll go ahead and tell the system where it needs to download this file. Let the download complete. So once the download has been completed, we can go ahead and check that folder. So I'll go to that folder here. And this is the CLI that got downloaded in my folder. So what I would do, I would initiate the process of installation here. So double click on it, and it would be asking you an option saying that, do you want to allow this app to make the changes to the device? Click on yes. And once that is done, this is how the CLI setup would look like. We do not have to make any changes. Just click on next and then install. So it would take some time for the CLI to be installed. So we'll wait for this CLI installation to be completed, and then we can proceed with the next steps that we have as a part of this setup. If you see here, the installation has been completed. Now what we can do is we can click on close here. So far what we have done, we have installed the VS Code. We have also installed the Salesforce CLI. Now, how do I test that if the Salesforce CLI has been installed properly in my system or not? I'll show you how do we validate if our Salesforce CLI has been installed properly or not. So for that, let's initiate the command line interface by searching CMD. So this is my command prompt. I'll open the command prompt here. In the command prompt, all you need to do is start typing sftx and hit enter. If the installation of your CLI has been completed properly, you'll be seeing a couple of options that you can use using your sftx. So if you see here, after a while, since we are using this command for the first time, once I have written sftx and hit enter, it is giving me a couple of options. So some commands are a help command, a plugin command, update command, a version command. So these are the commands that I can use after writing sftx. So if you see the screen, that means your Salesforce CLI installation has been completed successfully. Now, what is the next step that we have? So if we go back to our PPT screen, we have completed step number 1, we have completed step number 2, we have validated our VS Code has been installed by seeing that VS Code as a ID that got opened, and we have validated if our CLI, Salesforce CLI has been installed properly, that we have done. And what is the third step? So the third step is to add Salesforce extension in your VS Code. Let's go ahead and quickly do that as well. For that, I am switching to my VS Code, which looks like this. All right. The first step that we need to do here is go ahead and click on this icon that is there towards the left-hand side, which says extensions. In here, what you need to do, search for Salesforce extension pack. So in my case, it has already been installed. So that is why you do not see this install button here, just like how it shows up here. In case if you have already installed, you do not see that. That is how you would validate if your extension pack has already been installed in your VS Code. Click on that install button. If you still see that install icon or a button just like this, click on that, and that should install your Salesforce extension package. So that is your step number 3. So in my case, it has been completed. So I'll just go with that. And once you completed it, you would be validating it. If the install button is not there, that means it has been successfully installed. We have installed that Salesforce extension pack as well. Now, what is the next step here? In case if you want to use your Lightning Web Components, we can add that extension as well in your VS Code. So that is your step number 4. What I'll do, I'll go ahead and use the same extensions, search for Lightning Web Component, do the same thing. If you see an install button, click on it. If it is already been installed, you will not see that button. So we are good on that as well. So feel free to click on that. It would take some time to install that. Once done, you should be seeing this screen where it says the install button would not be available to you. So we are all set in terms of setting up our VS Code. We can go ahead and get started with our process of connecting the VS Code with our Salesforce org. These 4 steps are initially needed in terms of setting up our VS Code. So that way we can proceed with the next step of connecting it with our SFTX.
Hey guys, if you like this video, do like, share and subscribe to SFTC Quest.